Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the Ultimate Fashion History with me, Amanda Halley, and a Valentine's Day special episode of 20th Century Style Icons. It's my little Valentine's card to you. And in this episode, we are going to look at the impeccable and effortless French stylings of one of my all-time favorite couples, Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin. And true style icons they undoubtedly were, but they were so much more than that. Even though their romantic relationship only lasted for 13 years, they are to French culture what Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall are to American culture. That perfect couple that every other couple wanted to be, or at the very least, wanted to be friends with. Serge Gainsbourg. How to even describe the musical and lyrical genius of Serge? In Francophone nations, he truly is up there as one of the greats, along with Charles Trenet and Jacques Brel. Yet Serge's long career traversed every musical genre going, and he mastered them all. From jazz to yeah to high 60s pop, psychedelia, concept albums, reggae. There wasn't a genre that Serge didn't embrace, his music giving France its soundtrack in the pop culture era and beyond. And as many of you know, I lived in Paris for 17 years, and Serge Gainsbourg to the French is sort of like the Beatles and Bob Dylan and David Bowie and Irving Berlin all rolled into one, with Baudelaire thrown in by way of his lyrics. Supremely talented, Serge never thought of himself as a successful musician or composer. He always said he was a failed painter because that's what he set out to be. And he never seemed quite as convinced as the rest of us regarding his genius. He was also pretty unconvinced about his looks. He believed himself to be almost spectacularly ugly, not realizing that there's far, far more to what makes a person attractive than how they look physically. I'd actually say that was the least important factor in what makes a person attractive, and Serge Gainsbourg, oh mon Dieu, there was not a woman in the world who didn't hear Je t'aime moi non plus in 1969 and wish that Serge was singing it to them. With a face like a cunning wolf about to pounce, that bad boy charm, and his incredible charisma, it's no wonder that a certain Brigitte Bardot would fall for his charms, the two becoming lovers, and Serge writing some fabulous songs for her, as well as the powerful song Initials Bébé as his love anthem to her. By the time Serge met Jane in 1968, he really could not have been more famous. His hit songs constantly played on the radio, his appearances on TV enforcing his public image as France's bad boy, that agent provocateur par excellence. Heck, he'd even won the Eurovision Song Contest with his song for a teenage France Gall, Poupée de cire, Poupée de sang. And if you want to hear more about France Gall and the other Yaya girls, yes, I have an episode on them. I'll leave a link. Meanwhile, across La Manche in Angleterre, Jane Birkin had burst upon the swinging London scene as one of its leading it girls. With her huge doe eyes, long legs, that perfectly 1960s gangly sort of adolescent figure, she started off as a model but soon found her way into the movies, and look, here she is with blonde hair on the right as one of the birds in Antonioni's bafflingly 1960s blow-up with David Hemmings. And look, she's already carrying her signature basket as a handbag. While still in her teens, Jane had already married and separated from composer John Barry. That's right, John Barry, a legend in his own right, who composed the James Bond theme, the pair having the first of Jane's 3 daughters, Kate Barry. In 1968, Jane went over to France for what she thought would be a 6-week filming sojourn, to film the art house movie Slogan with, naturellement, Serge Gainsbourg. and she absolutely loathed him. The movie's steamy love scenes notwithstanding, she found him to be rude and arrogant, and nicknamed him Serge Bourguignon behind his back. But eventually, after he took her out for a boozy night on the town, the two became an inseparable couple, the couple, and stayed together for the next 13 years. And this surprised everybody because, seen from the outside, they seemed like a very unlikely couple indeed. 18 years her senior, Serge was a child of Russian Jewish immigrants to France, and during the occupation he had to wear the yellow star. And I remember once reading that when he went down to the town hall with his parents to collect his yellow star from the Nazi oppressors, he said that he was excited to get it. He thought it was like a treat or a present, because he was too little to understand what it meant. But he soon learned and lived out the occupation with the same fear as his Jewish family and compatriots, an experience that marked him forever and prompted him in the 1970s to write a concept album based upon his Jewish identity and the Holocaust. Jane, on the other hand, was born into an upper-middle-class English family, and there she is as a little girl with her very pretty mother. She was a posh little girl, one could say, who did all the things that posh little English girls did in that era. She went to boarding school and she rode ponies, and she was really quite privileged, if a little shy. And beneath all of his brooding intensity and bad boy antics, Serge was shy too. I've often found that life's biggest show-offs are often its shyest people. And when the two of them finally clicked, they really clicked. And that 6-week movie shoot in France turned into 54 years, because Jane Birkin still lives in France. This sweet, charming, and kinda goofy English girl who didn't speak a word of French when she first arrived, becoming one of France's national treasures. This might be hard to imagine when we remember what put Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin on the international pop culture map. The sexy and smouldering single, Je t'aime moi non plus, with lots of heavy breathing and sexy lyrics. It was banned by the BBC, banned by the Vatican, which of course made everybody in the world rush out to buy a copy. There was even a rumor that the record had been made by putting a microphone under Serge and Jane's bed as they made love, a suggestion that Serge laughed off by quipping, "If we'd have done that, it would have been an LP." Gosh, he was cheeky. And that song made Jane into a genuine star too. Serge then writing hit song after hit song for the woman he'd chosen to spend his life with. And there are those who say that with her wispy, baby-like singing voice and modest acting ability, she may have ridden Serge's coattails to fame. Jane herself says she did. She says, looking back, she didn't think she really had very much talent, and that if it hadn't been for Serge, she wouldn't have become famous. I'm not so easily convinced by this, though. Jane still sells out auditoriums around the world with concert tours, and okay, she doesn't belt him out like Ethel Merman, but her little high-pitched, whispery voice has a charm and a quality all of its own, and I genuinely love her albums of the 70s. They're so atmospheric. Jane was Serge's muse, and he was sort of her Gallic Henry Higgins, turning an already well-spoken Eliza Doolittle into a bona fide star. A Svengali, perhaps, but not, I think, a father figure. In fact, by all accounts, it was Jane who was the parent in that relationship. As Serge's lifestyle, no drugs, he wouldn't have them in the house, but booze. Yes, a lot of booze. Evidently forcing Jane to take a lot of the responsibility for the boring everyday practicalities of life, something she seemed delighted to do. So I don't think Serge was a parent to Jane. But he was a fabulous parent to Jane's daughter Kate, whom he adopted as his own and utterly adored, and Kate would soon be joined by Serge and Jane's biological child, Charlotte, who of course would grow up to be the ridiculously talented and cool actor and singer Serge Gainsbourg. Anyway, back to her mama and papa and why they've made it to this episode of 20th Century Style Icons. Because they were style icons, genuine, 100%. Sometimes I know I stretch the imagination, I stretch the limits to what I consider a style icon to be here on the Ultimate Fashion History, but in the case of Jane and Serge, there is no argument because they basically created what we now call effortless French chic. With his low button shirts, loose ties, crumpled jackets, Serge somehow managed to make scruffiness look elegant, and as for Jane, she more or less invented that leggy, effortless French chic look of loose hair and low-riding jeans teamed with a simple blouse or tee. But they also loved to dress up, each of them really enjoying clothes and their relationship to fashion, a relationship they shared. He was interested in what she wore and helped her choose her clothes, and she did the same for him. In fact, it was Jane's idea that he sport what would become his trademark 3-day stubble. And they were as beloved by fashion magazines as they were by record buyers. Editorial after editorial featuring this hyper-cool couple who had sort of revolutionized the his and her approach to style. Yes, they were cool and they were chic in fashion shoots, but they really helped define what we now recognize as street style. Look how fabulous they look here. Even when relaxing at home, they just exuded this cool and relaxed confidence in their clothing. Wow. If existentialism had a fashion component, Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin embodied it. Look how great they both look here, as if it took them 32 seconds to get dressed. And yet, they came out the best-dressed people in Paris, defying the idea of couture and salons and Chanel, all of which suddenly seemed so stuffy and old-fashioned compared to the sartorial stylings of Serge and Jane. They were the love of each other's lives, yet Serge had another mistress, one that would ultimately destroy their union. Booze. Haunted by perhaps too many demons, Serge came to rely upon alcohol more and more, to a point where Jane, who, by the time they split in 1980, was still just in her early 30s, simply couldn't cope with. If you've ever known an alcoholic, you'll know that there comes a point when they're drinking, when they get so drunk, that they sort of disappear into their drunken state and you're no longer with the person you love anymore. And when that point gets earlier and earlier every day until basically that's it, I think we can understand why Jane just couldn't take Serge's self-destructive nature any longer, not least of all because he had already been hospitalized with heart problems, his doctors telling him that his drinking and his smoking would ultimately lead to an early death. Yet he just couldn't stop doing those things, and it broke Jane's heart to watch him basically killing himself on a daily basis. Yet the two remained each other's soulmates for the rest of his life, and here he is with Jane and Charlotte, and the toddler is Jane's child by film director Jacques Douillon, Lou. And when she was born, Serge sent a gift to Jane and signed it Papa de, Dad too. He was that generous of nature, especially when it came to kids. And of course, little Lou would grow up to be model and singer Lou Douillon. Oh my goodness, what a gorgeous family. Anyway, Serge's big heart finally gave out for good in 1991. He was only 62, and Jane, and particularly Charlotte, were left absolutely devastated. But hey, this is my Valentine's Day special, my Valentine's Day card to you, and I do not want to end on a downer. I much prefer to remember Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin at their happiest and their most stylish. I hope you enjoyed this episode here on the UFH. I'll be back very soon with more episodes. I wish you all a happy Valentine's Day, whether you're having fun with a sweetheart, a loved one, your pets, your children, your pals, or yourself. Take care for now, and thanks for watching.